Sophia's hands trembled as she stood outside the locked nursery door, toddler Ethan's screams piercing through the mahogany. Vanessa's voice cut through the wood like ice. "Stop coddling him! He needs discipline." Through the keyhole, Sophia saw the little boy's tear-streaked brown face, alone in complete darkness. 6-year-old Lily huddled beside Sophia, whispering with a broken voice. She said, "We're not really Whitmores because Mama was black." The new gardener appeared beside them in the hallway. Something in his piercing blue eyes made Vanessa freeze when she opened the door. Sophia didn't know this moment would expose everything and destroy her life before saving it. 3 weeks earlier, Sophia stepped through the iron gates of the Whitmore estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The mansion rose before her like something from a dream, all white columns and pristine windows catching the morning Sunday. She had gotten the job through an agency after months of desperate searching, and she needed this position more than she had ever needed anything in her 28 years. Her grandmother's medical bills were mounting. Her own dreams of finishing nursing school had died 2 years ago when the money ran out, and the cramped apartment in Bridgeport felt like it was closing in on her. This job paid well enough to change everything. The head housekeeper, an older white woman named Mrs. Patterson, had led her through marble hallways that seemed to stretch forever, past oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors and antique furniture that probably cost more than Sophia had earned in her entire life. Then Mrs. Patterson introduced her to Vanessa Hartley, Mr. Whitmore's fiancée, who would be managing the household while Mr. Whitmore was away on an extended business trip. Vanessa was beautiful, in that effortless way wealthy people often were, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, her cream-colored dress probably costing thousands of dollars. But her smile never reached her pale green eyes. She looked Sophia up and down slowly, her gaze lingering on Sophia's natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. "So you're the new girl," Vanessa said, her tone making it sound like an accusation rather than a greeting. "The agency said you dropped out of college. Did you actually finish high school?" The question hit Sophia like a slap, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, ma'am. I completed 2 years of nursing school before family circumstances required me to work full-time." Vanessa reached out without warning and touched Sophia's hair, her fingers invasive and presumptuous. "Interesting texture. Do you actually wash this? Or is this the natural state?" Sophia stepped back, her jaw tight, but she forced herself to stay professional. She needed this job. Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "I maintain professional grooming standards, ma'am," Sophia replied carefully. Vanessa smiled that cold smile again. "I'm sure you do. Well, let's see if you're really qualified for this position. The standards here are quite high. I'm sure you understand that working in a home like this requires a certain level of sophistication." Before Sophia could respond, 2 children appeared in the doorway. The little girl had light brown skin and thick, beautiful curls that fell past her shoulders. She held the hand of a toddler boy with the same warm complexion and bright, curious eyes. "Miss Vanessa, can we have a snack?" the girl asked quietly, her voice tentative. Vanessa's expression hardened. "Lily, what have I told you about interrupting adult conversations? And look at your hair. It's completely wild. We're going to have to do something about that mess." Lily's hand went self-consciously to her curls. "Mama used to say my hair was beautiful." "Your mother isn't here anymore," Vanessa said sharply. "Now take your brother back to the playroom. The new maid will bring you something later." The children left quickly, and Sophia felt something twist in her chest. She learned from Mrs. K. Patterson later that the children's mother, Richard Whitmore's first wife, had been a black woman named Grace who died in a car accident 2 years ago. The children, Lily and Ethan, were the lights of their father's life, but he had been traveling constantly for business since Grace's death, and Vanessa had essentially taken over the household 6 months ago when she and Richard became engaged. Over the next few hours, Sophia met the rest of the small staff and began to understand the layout of the massive estate. She also met Richard's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, an elegant woman in her mid-60s who visited daily. Eleanor looked at Sophia with barely concealed disdain when they were introduced in the parlor. "Another one from the agency," Eleanor said to Vanessa, as if Sophia weren't standing right there. "I do hope this one understands proper behavior. Standards have been slipping terribly. The help these days simply doesn't understand their place." Sophia kept her face carefully neutral, years of experience teaching her how to swallow anger and humiliation. Later that afternoon, while cleaning the second-floor hallway, Sophia encountered the new gardener through the window. He was older than typical gardeners, perhaps in his early 40s, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair streaked with gray. He wore simple work clothes and moved among the rose bushes with careful precision. What struck Sophia was how he paused when the children came outside to play, watching them with an intensity that seemed odd for someone simply tending plants. Their eyes met briefly through the glass, and something in his gaze made her pause. He looked sad and angry all at once. That evening, Sophia found Lily crying in her bedroom, a beautiful space decorated in soft purples and whites. The little girl was clutching a photo frame, and when Sophia approached gently, she saw it was a picture of a stunning black woman with kind eyes holding baby Lily. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Sophia asked softly. Lily looked up with tears streaming down her face. "Miss Vanessa took all of Mama's pictures from downstairs. She said it's time to move on and we can't keep living in the past. She threw this one in the trash. I snuck it out." Sophia's heart broke. She knelt beside the child and gently wiped her tears. "Your mama was beautiful, and you look just like her. It's okay to miss her." The door opened suddenly. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her expression icy. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she asked Sophia in a dangerously quiet voice. "I was just comforting Lily, ma'am." She was upset. "You're here to clean, not to bond with the children or involve yourself in family matters. You need to know your place, Sophia. This is your first and only warning. Cross boundaries again, and you'll be looking for a new job. Understood?" Sophia stood slowly, meeting Vanessa's eyes. "Yes, ma'am. Understood." As she left the room, Sophia heard Vanessa speaking to Lily in a harsh whisper, berating her for being dramatic, and telling her that crying over old photographs was unacceptable behavior. Sophia's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she kept walking. She needed this job. She had to stay silent, but every instinct in her body was screaming that something was very wrong in this beautiful house. The next 2 weeks revealed the true horror of life in the Whitmore mansion. Sophia watched helplessly as Vanessa's treatment of the children escalated from cold neglect to active cruelty. One morning, Sophia entered Lily's bathroom to find the little girl sitting on a stool while Vanessa stood behind her with a flat iron, aggressively straightening her natural curls. Lily winced with each pass of the hot tool, trying not to cry. "Sit still," Vanessa snapped. "This hair is completely unmanageable. We need to get it under control. You can't go around looking like some wild child. What would people think?" "Mama said my curls were a gift," Lily whispered. "Well, your mama clearly didn't care about appearances. In this family, we have standards." Sophia felt sick but couldn't intervene without risking her job. Later, she found Lily touching her straightened hair with a lost expression, as if she didn't recognize herself in the mirror. The treatment of little Ethan was even worse. Vanessa constantly criticized the toddler's appearance, making comments about his skin tone being unfortunate and how he would have challenges because he didn't look like a real Whitmore. She fed him separately from Lily, often giving him smaller portions and less appealing food, claiming he needed to learn discipline early. When Sophia tried to give Ethan an extra cookie one afternoon, Vanessa appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Did I say he could have that?" she demanded. "No, ma'am, I just thought. You're not paid to think. You're paid to follow instructions. From now on, you'll be responsible for the third-floor guest rooms as well. And I noticed some dust in the library. That's unacceptable. Your next paycheck will be docked $50 for substandard work." Sophia knew there had been no dust in the library. She had cleaned it meticulously. But she also knew arguing would accomplish nothing. Eleanor Whitmore made everything worse. She visited almost daily, and her comments grew increasingly pointed. She referred to the children as those poor, mixed babies, and lamented how different they looked from proper Whitmores. She spoke about Sophia as if she were furniture, discussing her within earshot and making assumptions about her education, her background, and her capabilities based solely on her appearance. One afternoon, while Sophia was serving tea in the sunroom, Eleanor said to Vanessa, "I still don't understand why Richard insists on keeping them here. There are excellent boarding schools that specialize in children with behavioral challenges. They could get the structure they clearly need." "The children don't have behavioral challenges," Sophia found herself saying before she could stop herself. Both women turned to stare at her with identical expressions of outrage. "Excuse me?" Eleanor said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Did someone ask for your opinion?" "No, ma'am. I apologize. It won't happen again." But Vanessa wasn't finished. For the next week, she added impossible tasks to Sophia's workload, requiring her to clean rooms that didn't need cleaning, rearrange furniture for no reason, and work hours that stretched from dawn until late into the night. Sophia's body ached, and her grandmother called worried because Sophia had barely visited in days. The worst discovery came when Sophia was cleaning the study and found Vanessa on the phone, clearly speaking to someone from the children's maternal family. "No, the children are adjusting beautifully," Vanessa said sweetly. "They really don't need outside contact right now. It's disruptive to their routine. I'll be sure to pass along your message." She hung up without writing anything down. The phone rang again almost immediately, and Vanessa let it go to voicemail. A woman's voice came through the speaker, tearful and desperate. "Lily, Ethan, it's Grandma Rose. Please, baby girl, if you can hear this, know that I love you. We've been trying to call for weeks. Tell your daddy to call us back. We miss you so much." Vanessa deleted the message, without listening to the end. Sophia realized, with growing horror, that Vanessa was systematically cutting the children off from their mother's family, isolating them completely. That evening, when Vanessa and Eleanor went out for dinner, Sophia made a decision that would change everything. She found Lily in her room, looking at pictures of her mother on an old iPad. "Lily, sweetie, would you like to call your grandma?" The child's face transformed with joy. "Really? Miss Vanessa said Grandma Rose doesn't want to talk to us anymore because we remind her too much of Mama." "That's not true, honey. Your grandma loves you very much." Sophia helped Lily video call her maternal grandmother, and the reunion was beautiful and heartbreaking. Rose sobbed at seeing her granddaughter, asked about Ethan, and promised she was trying to arrange a visit. They talked for 20 minutes before Sophia reluctantly ended the call, knowing Vanessa would be home soon. She helped Lily get ready for bed, the little girl happier than Sophia had seen her in weeks. But Sophia had made a critical error. Vanessa checked the call logs on the house phone system. 2 days later, Vanessa summoned Sophia to the study. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed with fury. "You allowed Lily to call her maternal grandmother without my permission. You violated house rules and disrespected my authority." "The child needed to speak to her family," Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's not your decision to make. You're fired. Pack your things and leave immediately." Panic flooded through Sophia. Without this job, she would lose everything: her grandmother's care, her apartment, any chance of getting back on her feet. "Please," she found herself saying, hating the desperation in her voice. "Please, I need this job. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Vanessa tilted her head, considering. "There might be a way you can stay, but you'll need to sign something first." She slid papers across the desk. It was a non-disclosure agreement with severe penalties for discussing family matters and a new employment contract at drastically reduced wages. Sophia's hands shook as she read through it. The NDA would legally prevent her from reporting anything she witnessed in the house, but she had no choice. She signed. Vanessa's smile was triumphant. "Good. Now you're legally bound to silence. Remember that. One more step out of line, and I'll make sure you never work again. I have connections, Sophia. I can make your life very difficult." As Sophia left the study, she passed the window overlooking the garden. The new gardener was there, pruning roses in the fading light. He looked up at her, and again she saw that strange intensity in his eyes. This time, she also saw what looked like anger. She wondered briefly who he was and why he seemed to care so much about what happened in this house. But she had her own survival to worry about. She had just signed away her ability to help those children, all to keep a job with a woman who was clearly cruel. The shame of it burned in her chest as she walked away. Richard Whitmore, the man everyone believed was traveling for business, had been living on his own estate as a gardener for 3 weeks. The deception ate at him daily, but he told himself it was necessary. His mother had called him in Singapore with concerns about Sophia overstepping boundaries and poisoning the children against their new family. Eleanor had painted a picture of a manipulative employee taking advantage of his absence. But Richard's late wife's sister had also called, frantic with worry, saying someone was blocking their calls to the children. Richard had made an impulsive decision. He returned home secretly, paid the real gardener to take an extended vacation, and took his place. He needed to see the truth of what was happening in his house without the performance people put on when the billionaire was watching. What he had witnessed in 3 weeks had shaken him to his core. His fiancée was a monster. His mother was complicit. And the only person truly protecting his children was a housemaid who was being systematically abused for her kindness. He watched now as Vanessa locked Ethan in his room as punishment for crying when she refused to read him a bedtime story. The boy's wails echoed through the upper floors while Vanessa went downstairs to pour herself wine, completely unmoved. Richard forced himself not to intervene. He needed evidence, documentation, proof that would stand up legally when he destroyed Vanessa and ensured she never got near his children again. But watching Sophia sneak upstairs 20 minutes later with food for his son, risking further punishment to comfort a frightened child, made him feel like the worst kind of coward. The next morning, Richard was trimming hedges near the kitchen window when he overheard Vanessa on the phone with someone named Preston. "The children are becoming a problem," she said in a low voice. "Richard is ridiculously attached to them, but I've been researching options. There are residential treatment facilities for children with behavioral and developmental issues. If we can establish a pattern of problems, we could make a case for sending them away, at least during the school year." "And the will?" Preston's voice came through on speaker. "Still working on it. Richard's assets are complex, but once we're married, I'll have more leverage. The key is getting those kids out of the picture. His mother agrees they're a constant reminder of that woman he married before me. Once they're gone, Richard will move on, and I'll be the only Mrs. Whitmore that matters." Richard's hands clenched around the hedge trimmers. He forced himself to stay still, to keep listening. "What about the maid?" Preston asked. "The black one. Is she still a problem? I've handled her, made her sign an NDA and cut her wages. She's trapped now. Even if she wanted to report something, she legally can't without facing massive penalties. And I've been documenting every little mistake, real or fabricated. When the time comes, I'll have a paper trail showing she was incompetent and possibly dangerous around the children. That'll be useful." Richard wanted to burst through the window and confront her immediately. But his lawyer had been clear. Accusations without proof would lead to a he-said, she-said situation. Vanessa was smart and connected. She would twist everything, possibly even get custody of the children during a legal battle by claiming Richard was unstable. He needed irrefutable evidence. That afternoon, Eleanor hosted a garden party for her society friends. Richard worked nearby, invisible in the way that servants and workers often are to the wealthy. The conversation he overheard made his blood boil. "Those poor children," one woman said, sipping champagne. "Such a tragedy that Richard married that woman. I mean, what was he thinking?" "Grace was actually quite accomplished," another replied carefully. "A doctor, if I recall." "Yes, but still. And now those children will always be caught between two worlds, never quite fitting in anywhere. You can't escape genetics." Eleanor's voice cut in smoothly. "We're doing our best with them. Vanessa has been wonderful about providing structure and discipline. They're quite wild, you understand. The influence of their mother's family. I'm sure you'll civilize them eventually," the first woman said. "Though it's such a shame Richard didn't marry someone more appropriate, someone like Vanessa from the start." The conversation continued in that vein, and Richard heard every word. His mother's casual racism, her friends' assumptions, their certainty that his children were somehow less than because of their mother's race. He thought of Grace, brilliant and beautiful Grace, who had loved him despite his wealth rather than because of it, who had made him a better man, whose death had shattered him so completely that he had thrown himself into work rather than face his grief, and in his absence he had allowed his children to be tormented. That evening, Richard was replacing bulbs in the garden lights when Sophia came outside. She didn't see him at first. She sat on a stone bench near the rose garden and put her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. He had watched her strength for weeks, her quiet courage in the face of constant degradation. Seeing her break down hurt something in his chest. He approached quietly. "Miss, are you all right?" Sophia looked up, startled, then quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm fine. Just needed some air." "You don't have to pretend with me," Richard said gently. "I've seen how they treat you." Sophia studied him warily. "You're just the gardener. What do you care?" "Maybe I care because I have eyes, because I've watched you protect those kids when no one else would." "Then you've also watched me fail," Sophia said bitterly. "I signed an NDA. I took reduced wages. I let them trap me because I was scared and desperate. Those children needed someone to stand up for them, and I sold out to keep my job. You did what you had to do to survive. That's not failure. That's human." Sophia laughed without humor. "Easy for you to say. You can walk away any time. I walk away, I lose everything. My grandmother's in a nursing home. The bills are crushing me. I had dreams once, you know. I was going to be a nurse. Help people. Now I clean toilets for a woman who treats me like I'm nothing, and I smile and say, 'Yes, ma'am,' because I have no choice." Richard wanted to tell her who he was, to end this immediately. But he knew it wasn't time yet. He needed more evidence, more documentation. Instead, he said, "Sometimes the bravest thing is just surviving until you can fight back. You're stronger than you think." Sophia looked at him for a long moment. "Who are you really? You don't look at things the way a gardener would. You watch everything like you're studying it. Just someone who cares about what's right," Richard said carefully. "And someone who thinks things are going to change very soon." Before Sophia could respond, a light went on in Ethan's window. The toddler's crying started again, that heartbroken sound that cut through the night. Vanessa had locked him in the dark once more. Sophia stood immediately, her exhaustion forgotten. "I have to go to him. She'll punish you again." "I don't care. He's scared and alone. Someone has to." Sophia stopped, her voice breaking. "Someone has to love them." Richard watched her hurry back to the house, this woman who sacrificed herself daily for his children, and he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would call his lawyer and private investigator. They would accelerate the timeline. He couldn't watch this continue any longer. But he didn't know that tomorrow, Vanessa would make her final, terrible move. The trap was about to close completely, and everyone would be forced to show their true faces. The next evening, Sophia was cleaning the upper hallway when Vanessa's assistant, a nervous young man named Bradley, approached her. "Miss Hartley wants to see you in the study immediately." Sophia's stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from being summoned to the study. She found Vanessa standing behind the desk, her expression coldly triumphant. Eleanor sat in a leather chair nearby, and Bradley hovered anxiously by the door. "Sophia, we have a serious problem," Vanessa said. "Several valuable items are missing from the house. A diamond bracelet from my jewelry box, and $500 in cash from the household safe." "I didn't take anything," Sophia said immediately, her heart pounding. "That's what a thief would say." Eleanor's voice was sharp with satisfaction. "These people always think they can help themselves to what doesn't belong to them." "I have never stolen anything in my life," Sophia said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Search my room. Search my belongings. You won't find anything." "Oh, we already searched your room," Vanessa said. "We found nothing, but that just means you were clever about hiding it." "Bradley, show her the security footage." Bradley set up a laptop and played video from the hallway camera. It showed Sophia entering Vanessa's bedroom suite earlier that afternoon while the family was out. "I was cleaning as instructed," Sophia protested. "You don't enter my private suite without permission." and convenient that you were there right around the time my bracelet went missing. I didn't take anything. This is insane. Vanessa picked up her phone. I'm calling the police. This is a clear case of theft, and I will not tolerate it in my home. Sophia felt the world tilting beneath her. Please, you know I didn't do this. Why would I risk everything I have? Maybe because you're desperate. Poor people often are. The police arrived within 20 minutes. 2 white officers, one older with a thick mustache, one younger with cold eyes. Vanessa greeted them warmly, playing the gracious hostess. Thank you for coming so quickly, officers. This has been so distressing. She explained the situation, showing them the security footage, describing the missing items. The officers turned to Sophia with expressions that had already decided her guilt. Ma'am, we need to search you, the older officer said. Against the wall, please. I didn't take anything, Sophia said desperately. Please, this is a misunderstanding. Then you won't mind being searched, the younger officer said. Unless you have something to hide. They searched her roughly, their hands invasive and impersonal. They found nothing. They went through her purse, dumping the contents on the floor. Nothing. The older officer frowned. You said there was $500 missing? Yes, Vanessa said. From the safe in the library. We didn't find any cash on her. She must have hidden it somewhere. Check her car. Sophia's hands were shaking now. I don't have a car. I take the bus. The younger officer looked at Vanessa. Did you actually see her take these items? Well, no, but the timing. So you have video of her entering a room she was assigned to clean, but no video of her actually taking anything? The older officer was studying Vanessa now with more skepticism. The camera doesn't cover every angle, Vanessa said, her voice sharpening. But I know my jewelry is missing, Eleanor spoke up. I saw her acting suspicious earlier today. She was lurking outside the library when I arrived. I was cleaning the hallway, Sophia protested. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't even arrive until the afternoon. Are you calling me a liar? Eleanor's voice rose. The officers exchanged glances. The younger one pulled out handcuffs. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station for questioning. Sophia felt her life ending. An arrest meant losing her job, losing her ability to help her grandmother, possibly losing custody rights if her cousin's family pushed for guardianship of her grandmother. It meant a criminal record, the end of any chance to return to nursing school, the destruction of everything she had worked for. Please, she heard herself say, her voice breaking. Please, I have a grandmother who depends on me. I didn't do this, please. The children appeared in the doorway. Lily rushed forward. Sophia didn't take anything. Miss Vanessa is lying. Vanessa's face went red. Lily, go to your room immediately. No, you're trying to hurt Sophia like you hurt us. Ethan started crying, reaching for Sophia. The younger officer looked uncomfortable now. Ma'am, maybe we should. The gardener appeared in the hallway. Richard had been working late, deliberately positioning himself nearby. He had heard Vanessa make the call to police and knew this was the moment. But he also knew that revealing himself now, without absolute proof, might not save Sophia. It would become a messy, he said-she said situation that could take weeks to resolve, during which Sophia would suffer. Excuse me, he said quietly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I might have information. Everyone turned to look at him. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. The gardener? What could you possibly know? I was working near the house earlier. I saw Miss Hartley's assistant, Bradley, leaving the library around 2 o'clock. He was carrying a small bag. Bradley's face went pale. That's not. I was just... May I see the security footage again? Richard asked the officers. The older officer, now thoroughly confused by the situation, nodded. Richard studied the laptop screen carefully. This timestamp shows when Sophia entered the bedroom suite. What time was the bracelet reported missing? Around 4 o'clock, Vanessa said impatiently. But she could have taken it earlier. But look here. Richard pointed at the screen. This shows the bedroom door at 2:15. You can see it opening, but no one enters. The angle doesn't show who's outside the frame. And the hallway camera has a blind spot right there. He indicated a section of the corridor. Someone familiar with the camera placements could use that to avoid being seen. The older officer was paying attention now. How does a gardener know the security camera blind spots? Richard met his eyes. I'm observant. I've worked here a few weeks. You notice things. He turned to Vanessa. When you searched Sophia's room and found nothing, did you search anywhere else? Vanessa's face was stiff. There was no need. What about staff areas where someone might hide something temporarily, planning to retrieve it later and frame someone else? The younger officer looked at Bradley, who was sweating now. Sir, do you have any reason to believe this man might be involved? Richard shrugged. I just know what I saw, and I know the timestamps don't quite add up the way Miss Hartley described. Vanessa's eyes flashed with fury, but Richard saw calculation there too. She was smart enough to see the trap. If they investigated further and found inconsistencies, if Bradley cracked under questioning, the whole scheme would unravel, and she couldn't know how much this gardener actually saw or knew. You know what? Vanessa said suddenly, her tone shifting to one of gracious embarrassment. I think I may have overreacted. I'm so sorry, officers. This has been a stressful time, and I jumped to conclusions. I probably misplaced the bracelet, and I may have miscounted the cash. The officers looked skeptical. Ma'am, you called in a theft report. I know, and I apologize for wasting your time. I'm sure the bracelet will turn up. Please, there's no need to arrest anyone or continue this investigation. The older officer looked at Sophia. Do you want to press charges for false accusation? Sophia was so shocked she could barely speak. I just want to keep my job. You're not pressing charges? I can't afford to. She hated how true it was. The officers left, clearly unhappy with the waste of their time. Vanessa waited until they were gone, then turned to Sophia with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You're very lucky, the gardener spoke up. Consider this your final warning. Step out of line again, and next time, there won't be anyone to save you. As everyone dispersed, Richard caught Sophia's eyes. She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. He wanted to tell her everything, to end this nightmare immediately. But Vanessa's move tonight told him something crucial. She was getting desperate, which meant she was getting dangerous. He needed to move faster. Vanessa's fury at being embarrassed manifested in systematic torture. Over the next week, she made Sophia's life a living hell, and she did it all within the bounds of legal employer behavior. Nothing that could be reported or fought. Sophia's work schedule expanded to 18-hour days. She was required to arrive at 5 in the morning and often didn't leave until 11 at night. The guest rooms on the third floor, which had been closed for months, were suddenly opened, and Sophia was expected to clean and maintain all of them daily, in addition to her regular duties. When Sophia stumbled from exhaustion one afternoon, dropping a vase, Vanessa docked $200 from her pay for property damage, even though the vase was a cheap replica worth $20 at most. The humiliations were constant and public. Vanessa began hosting small gatherings, and during these events she would summon Sophia repeatedly for trivial tasks in front of guests, using her presence to emphasize her own status. Sophia, you missed a spot on the floor. Clean it now, please. Sophia, this water isn't cold enough. Get fresh ice. Sophia, stand here while I show my friends this absolutely hideous painting. Can you imagine having such poor taste? The guests would laugh uncomfortably, and Sophia would stand there, her face burning, forcing herself to remain expressionless. She needed this job. She needed this job. She needed this job. The mantra played constantly in her head. But worse than the public humiliation was what Vanessa did to destroy Sophia's future. She called other wealthy families in Greenwich, spreading word that Sophia was unreliable and possibly a thief. She contacted the nursing school Sophia had attended, making concerned inquiries about Sophia's character and hinting at problems that could impact Sophia's chances of ever returning. She even called the nursing home where Sophia's grandmother lived. The administrator, Mrs. Chen, called Sophia one evening, her voice troubled. Mrs. Chen is Chen 710. Johnson, I received a disturbing call today from a Vanessa Hartley. She claimed to be conducting a welfare check on your grandmother and implied there might be concerns about your guardianship. She suggested we should investigate whether your grandmother is receiving proper care and attention. Sophia's blood ran cold. My grandmother is fine. I visit every week. This is Mrs. Chen. This is retaliation from my employer. Please, don't let her poison you against me. I'm not easily swayed, Mrs. Chen said carefully, but I am required to follow up on any concerns raised. I'll need to schedule a meeting with you to review your grandmother's care plan. Sophia knew what that meant. Additional scrutiny, documentation, bureaucracy. If Mrs. Chen decided there were legitimate concerns, social services could get involved. Sophia could lose everything. That night, Sophia sat in the tiny storage room where Vanessa had relocated her. The staff quarters had been needed for other purposes, so Sophia now slept in a windowless space in the basement, barely large enough for a cot and her few belongings. It was cold, damp, and the overhead light flickered constantly. Sophia pulled out her phone and looked at her bank account. After Vanessa's wage cuts and the property damage deductions, she had $233. Her grandmother's nursing home payment was due in a week, and she was $1,500 short. She had no savings left, no way to bridge the gap. She was going to lose everything anyway. She might as well quit, walk away, try to find something else. But Vanessa had destroyed her reputation. Who would hire her now? Sophia put her face in her hands and let herself cry for the first time in weeks. She cried for the dreams she had lost, for the indignity she endured daily, for the exhaustion that made her bones ache. She cried because she was trapped in a nightmare with no exit, and she cried because those two children upstairs needed her, and she was failing them just like she was failing her grandmother. She was failing everyone. She heard footsteps on the basement stairs. For a panicked moment, she thought it was Vanessa coming to torment her further, but it was the gardener. He looked around the storage room with barely concealed horror. "This is where they have you sleeping?" "It's fine," Sophia said, quickly wiping her eyes. "I'm fine, you're not fine. None of this is fine." Richard wanted to end this immediately, to reveal himself and use his power to destroy Vanessa. But his lawyer had been clear. They needed more time, more documentation. Vanessa was smart and connected. If they moved too quickly, she could claim persecution, could tie things up in legal battles that would take months, could potentially even get temporary custody of the children by claiming Richard was unstable for creating this elaborate deception. "Why do you stay?" he asked Sophia. She laughed bitterly. "You asked me that before. Because I have no choice. Because my grandmother needs care I can't afford without this job. Because I was stupid enough to sign an NDA that traps me here. Because Vanessa has made sure I can't get work anywhere else. Because—" her voice broke. "Because those kids upstairs have no one else. Vanessa is destroying them, piece by piece, and I can't stop it, but at least I can hold them when they cry." Richard sat down on the floor beside her cot. "What if I told you things were going to change very soon? I'd say that's easy for you to believe. Men like you can walk away any time. People like me, we just survive until we can't anymore. And if you can't survive anymore, what then?" Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. "Then I guess I fight back, even if it destroys me. Because at some point, you have to decide what you can live with. And I can't live with letting those children suffer without at least trying to do something. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. Because what's the point of keeping your life safe if you hate who you have to become to keep it?" Richard studied this woman who had lost so much and still had the courage to sacrifice more for his children. "You're stronger than you know," he said quietly. "And this isn't over. It feels over," Sophia whispered. Upstairs they heard Ethan start crying again. Sophia stood immediately. Exhaustion. Forgotten. "I have to go. She'll punish you. I know. But he needs someone." Richard watched her climb the stairs, and he made a decision. He called his lawyer from his phone. "Marcus, we move tomorrow. I don't care about the risks. This ends now." But neither of them knew that tomorrow Vanessa would reveal her most dangerous plan yet. The final trap was about to close, and everyone would be forced to make impossible choices. The next evening, everything came to a head in the worst possible way. Sophia heard Ethan screaming from his locked bedroom at 9 o'clock at night. The sound was different this time. not just scared but panicked, the cry of a child who had been alone in the dark for hours. Vanessa had gone out to dinner with Eleanor, leaving explicit instructions that the children were not to be disturbed. But Sophia couldn't listen to that sound anymore. She couldn't be complicit in this abuse one more second. She grabbed a bobby pin from her hair and worked it into the lock on Ethan's door, a skill she had learned growing up in rough neighborhoods where locked doors sometimes meant the difference between safety and danger. The lock clicked open. Inside, Ethan sat in the corner of his dark room, his face swollen from crying, his small body shaking. The smell told her he had wet himself, too scared to call for help. "Oh, baby," Sophia whispered, scooping him up. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Ethan clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. She heard a soft knock and found Lily in the hallway, her eyes huge and frightened. "I heard him crying," Lily whispered. "Miss Vanessa said, 'We're not supposed to bother you. Come here, sweetheart.'" Sophia held both children, and they clung to her like she was their last hope. Because she was, Sophia made a decision. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera. "Lily, Noah, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to tell me the truth. Can you do that?" The children nodded. Sophia began recording. "Lily, has Miss Vanessa ever hurt you?" The little girl hesitated, then nodded. "She pulls my hair when she's angry. She twisted my arm once when I spilled juice. She said it was discipline, and I shouldn't tell Daddy because he wouldn't understand. She locked me in the dark," Ethan added, his voice small. "Lots of times. When I cry, she gets mad. She says we're not real Whitmores," Lily continued, her voice gaining strength as the words poured out. "She says our skin is the wrong color, and our hair is too messy. She says Mama was a mistake, and we're mistakes too. She threw away all of Mama's pictures except the one I saved." Sophia's hands shook as she held the phone steady. "Does your daddy know about this?" "Daddy's always gone," Lily said sadly. "He doesn't see." The door opened. Richard stood there, still in his gardener's clothes, and the expression on his face was pure devastation. He had been standing outside the door for several minutes, listening to his children describe the abuse they had suffered in his absence. The children stared at him, confused by the intensity of his emotion. Then slowly, Lily's eyes widened. "You're not Jim," she whispered. "You move like Daddy. You have Daddy's eyes." Richard crossed the room and sank to his knees in front of his children. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here. I'm so sorry I let this happen to you." Lily touched his face with tentative fingers. "Daddy? Yes, baby, it's me. I've been here for weeks, watching, trying to gather proof of what was happening. But I should have stopped it immediately. I should have protected you." Sophia backed away, her mind reeling. The gardener was Richard Whitmore. The billionaire owner of this estate had been here the entire time, watching his children suffer, watching her suffer. "You knew," she said, her voice hollow. "You watched all of this happen, and you did nothing." Richard looked at her, and she saw shame and regret in his eyes. "I needed evidence that would stand up in court. If I revealed myself without proof, Vanessa could have claimed I was unstable, could have fought for custody during the legal battle," my lawyer said. "Your lawyer," Sophia repeated. "You were protecting your legal position while your children were being tortured, while I was being destroyed. You could have stopped this at any moment with a single word, but you needed to make sure your case was airtight first. Sophia, please understand." "I understand perfectly," Sophia said, her voice shaking with anger. "I understand that even the good ones, even the ones who claim to care, will watch a black woman suffer if it serves their purposes. I understand that my life, my dignity, my future, all of it was expendable as long as you got what you needed. That's not fair." "Fair?" Sophia's voice rose. "You want to talk about fair? I lost my job prospects, my reputation, my housing, my ability to care for my grandmother. I slept in a basement storage room and was humiliated daily, and you watched it happen because you needed to protect yourself legally. You have all the power in the world, and you used it to investigate rather than to help." Richard had no defense because she was right. He had watched her suffer because ending things immediately would have been legally risky for him. He had prioritized his own protection over her well-being, telling himself it was for the greater good, but really it was just another form of privilege. He could afford to wait and gather evidence. She couldn't. "You're right," he said quietly. "I failed you. I failed my children. I let my fear of legal complications matter more than stopping immediate harm. That was wrong." Sophia wanted to say more, wanted to scream at him, but before she could, they heard the front door open downstairs. Vanessa was home. Vanessa's heels clicked on the marble floor as she entered the foyer. She was laughing at something Eleanor said, her voice carrying up the stairs. Then she saw the light on in Ethan's room and her laughter stopped. She climbed the stairs quickly, Eleanor following behind. When she reached the doorway and saw the scene inside, Sophia with both children, the unlocked door, and the gardener standing with them, her face transformed with rage. "What is going on here?" she demanded. "Sophia, I gave explicit instructions that the children were not to be disturbed. And why is the gardener in the house?" "Miss Vanessa, you locked a toddler in a dark room for hours," Sophia said, her voice steady despite her fear. "That's abuse. That's discipline," Vanessa snapped. "Not that you would understand proper child-rearing. And you," she pointed at Richard, "you're fired. Leave this property immediately." "I don't think so," Richard said quietly. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You're the help. You don't get to decide." "Actually, I do." Richard pulled off the worn cap he had been wearing, straightened to his full height. "Because this is my house." For a moment, everyone froze. Vanessa stared at him, her mouth opening and closing. Eleanor gasped. Then Vanessa's shock transformed into calculation. She laughed, a brittle sound. "Richard? My God, Richard, what are you doing dressed like that? Have you been? Are you having some kind of breakdown?" "I'm fine, Vanessa. I've been here for weeks, watching what you've been doing to my children." "Watching?" "Richard, that doesn't make any sense. You're clearly not well. The stress of work, it's broken you. Mother Eleanor, you see this, don't you? He's having a mental health crisis." Eleanor recovered quickly, following Vanessa's lead. "Richard, darling, you're frightening me. Why would you pretend to be a gardener in your own home? This isn't rational behavior. It's perfectly rational when you suspect your fiancé of abusing your children." "Abusing?" Vanessa's voice rose. "That's an outrageous accusation. I've been caring for these children while you abandoned them for months. I've been trying to provide structure and discipline to two very difficult kids, and apparently you've been spying on me like some kind of paranoid lunatic." "The children have bruises," Sophia interjected. "They've been locked in dark rooms, emotionally abused, cut off from their maternal family." Vanessa whirled on her. "You! This is all your fault. You've been poisoning Richard's mind, haven't you? You've been manipulating him, probably seducing him, turning him against me. That's what you've been doing here, isn't it?" "Don't you dare," Richard said, his voice dangerous. "Sophia has done nothing but protect my children while you tormented them." "Protect them?" Vanessa laughed. "She's the one who's been overstepping boundaries, trying to replace their dead mother, filling their heads with ideas. Richard, can't you see? She's been manipulating all of us. She probably orchestrated this entire thing to get close to you, to your money." Eleanor nodded eagerly. Yes, that makes sense. Richard, you're not thinking clearly. You've obviously been under tremendous strain, and this woman has taken advantage of your vulnerability. We need to call Dr. Morrison, get you some help. I don't need help. I need you both out of my house." Vanessa's face hardened. "You can't be serious. Richard, we're engaged. We're getting married in 3 months. Everything is planned. What will people think if you suddenly call it off based on these insane accusations?" "I don't care what people think. I care about my children." "Your children," Vanessa said, her voice turning cold and cruel. "Those mixed-breed mistakes that remind everyone of your poor judgment in marrying a black woman. Richard, be honest. You know people talk. You know how the children are perceived. I was trying to help them, trying to teach them how to fit in, how to overcome their unfortunate genetics." The room went silent. Even Eleanor looked uncomfortable with how blatant Vanessa had made her racism. Richard's voice was ice. "Get out of my house. Now." Vanessa realized she had gone too far. She tried to recover. "Richard, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I'm just upset. You're right. I've been too harsh with the children. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, work it out. Please, don't throw away what we have." "What we have? We have nothing. You've been abusing my children and terrorizing my employee. I want you gone. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. We're engaged. We have a contract. The prenup you signed very clearly states that abuse of the children is grounds for immediate termination with no financial settlement." Vanessa's face went pale. "You're going to listen to a maid over me? A nobody who probably lied about everything?" "I have evidence," Sophia said quietly, holding up her phone. "I recorded the children describing the abuse. I took pictures of their bruises. I documented everything." Vanessa lunged at Sophia, trying to grab the phone. Richard stepped between them, catching Vanessa's wrist. "Touch her again, and I'll have you arrested for assault. This is insane." Vanessa was screaming now. "You're all insane." "Mother Eleanor, call the police. Tell them Richard is having a mental breakdown and is dangerous. We need to have him evaluated, possibly hospitalized." Eleanor pulled out her phone, but before she could dial, Richard said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mother." "Why not?" "Because I have a private investigator who's been documenting everything. He has video of your abuse, Vanessa. He has recordings of your phone calls discussing institutionalizing my children and changing my will. He has footage of you and Mother discussing their genetics and planning to send them away. All of it is documented." Vanessa's face went from pale to red. "You've been recording me? That's illegal. Actually, Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recordings. And the investigator wasn't recording you, he was recording activity in my house, which is entirely legal." The lawyer appeared in the doorway, as if summoned. Marcus Thornton was a distinguished man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Good evening, everyone. Mr. Whitmore, should I call the police now? I think that would be appropriate, Marcus." Vanessa looked frantically between them. "You can't do this. I'll fight you. I'll tell everyone you lost your mind, that you invented all of this. People will believe me. I have connections, Richard. I can destroy your reputation." "You can try," Richard said quietly. "But I have money, evidence, and the truth." "What do you have?" Vanessa's face twisted with rage. "I have dirt on you too, Richard. I know things about your business dealings, your taxes, your offshore accounts. You want to play this game? I can make your life hell. Threaten me again, and I'll add extortion to the charges." The police arrived within minutes, the same two officers who had responded to Vanessa's false theft accusation. They looked confused and irritated to be called back to this house. The older officer, whose name was Daniels, looked around at the assembly with weary eyes. "Someone want to explain? What's going on here?" Vanessa immediately launched into her story. "Officers, thank God you're here. My fiancé has been having a mental breakdown. He's been living in disguise as a gardener, making wild accusations, and he's working with this maid to try to ruin me. I'm very concerned for his well-being and the safety of the children." Marcus stepped forward. "Officers, I'm Marcus Thornton, Mr. Whitmore's attorney. What Miss say? Hartley is describing as a mental breakdown is actually an investigation into suspected child abuse. We have substantial evidence documenting Miss Hartley's abuse of Mr. B. Whitmore's children, including video footage, photographic evidence, and recorded testimony from the children themselves." "That's fabricated," Vanessa said quickly. "All of it. This woman," she pointed at Sophia, "has been manipulating everyone. She falsified evidence because she's trying to get close to Richard, to his money." Officer Daniels looked at Sophia. "You were involved in that theft accusation a few days ago, weren't you?" "Yes, sir. An accusation that turned out to be false." "Very convenient," Vanessa interjected. "Don't you see? She's playing you all. She's probably the one abusing the children and trying to frame me for it." Lily, who had been clinging to her father, suddenly spoke up. "That's not true. Sophia is nice. Miss Vanessa is the mean one. She hurts us and says bad things about Mama." Vanessa's face hardened. The children are confused. They don't understand proper discipline versus abuse. And they've clearly been coached. I wasn't coached, Lily said, her voice getting louder. You're lying! You're always lying! Officer Daniels looked at his partner, then at Marcus. Sir, you say you have evidence? Substantial evidence. Video documentation, photographic evidence, recorded testimony, all legally obtained. And you're claiming child abuse? Yes. Multiple instances over several weeks. Vanessa laughed, a harsh sound. This is ridiculous. You're really going to take the word of a paranoid billionaire who's been playing dress-up, a manipulative maid with an agenda, and two children who don't know the difference between discipline and abuse? I know the difference, a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. A black woman in her early 60s stood there, her face set with determination. I'm Rose Mitchell, the children's maternal grandmother. Someone finally called me and told me what was happening. I've been trying to reach these children for months, and someone has been blocking my calls. Richard's face crumpled with shame. Rose, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You didn't know because you weren't here, Rose said, her voice sharp. And this woman used your absence to torture your babies and cut them off from their mother's family. She walked over to Lily and Ethan, who recognized her immediately. Grandma Rose! Lily cried, running to her. Rose held both children, and they clung to her. She looked up at the officers with tears in her eyes. These children called me tonight. They told me what's been happening. If you need someone to testify about abuse, I'll do it. My daughter isn't here to protect her babies, but I am. Vanessa saw the trap closing. She made one last desperate play. Fine, maybe I was too strict. Maybe I made mistakes. But this isn't criminal. This is just a family dispute. You can't arrest me for trying to discipline someone else's children. You can if that discipline crosses into abuse, Officer Daniels said. And you definitely can if we find evidence of false accusations, extortion, and conspiracy to harm minors. Marcus pulled out a tablet and showed the officers selected clips. Footage of Vanessa locking Ethan in his room. Audio of her phone calls discussing institutionalizing the children. Video of her physically grabbing Lily hard enough to leave bruises. The officers' expressions changed. The younger one pulled out handcuffs. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning. This is ridiculous, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its conviction. You're arresting me based on edited footage? Richard probably manufactured all of this. Then you can explain your side at the station, Officer Daniels said. But right now, we have enough probable cause to detain you for suspected child abuse. As they led Vanessa away, she turned to look at Richard, and her beautiful face twisted with pure hatred. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy all of you. Eleanor, who had been silent through the latter part of the confrontation, spoke up. Richard, I should go with her. She needs someone. You knew, Mother, Richard said quietly. You knew what she was doing, and you helped her do it. You participated in the abuse because you thought my children were somehow less than because of their mother's race. That's not. I was just trying to help. They need structure, guidance. They need love, Mother. They need to be celebrated for who they are, not punished for their heritage. And you need to leave my house. Eleanor's face crumpled. You're my son. This is my family. And they are your grandchildren. But you treated them like they were defective because they reminded you that I loved a black woman. That's unforgivable. Eleanor left, following the police car carrying Vanessa. Richard stood in the hallway holding both his children with Rose and Sophia nearby. The house felt different now, as if a weight had been lifted. But Richard knew the hardest part was still ahead. The next few hours blurred together. The police needed full statements. Child Protective Services arrived to investigate, and Richard had to produce all the evidence Marcus had gathered to prove that his children were now safe. Rose stayed by the children's side, her presence a comfort they desperately needed. Sophia started to slip away, feeling like she no longer belonged in this family drama. But Richard stopped her. Please don't go. Not yet. Why would I stay? You don't need me anymore. Vanessa's gone. The children have their grandmother. You have your house back. Sophia, I owe you more than I can ever repay. You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone decent would have done. But you did it at tremendous cost to yourself. You sacrificed everything to protect my children when I wasn't there to do it myself." Sophia looked at him, this man who had all the power and privilege in the world and had still failed the people who depended on him. "You want to know what you owe me? You owe it to yourself and your children to understand what really happened here. This wasn't just about Vanessa being cruel. It was about a system that let her be cruel because she knew who would be believed and who wouldn't. It was about the fact that I, a black woman, had no power or recourse when she abused me because she could always destroy me with a single phone call. It was about your mother's racism and your community's racism and the way people like me are always the collateral damage. I know, and I can't undo what happened. No, you can't. But you can make sure it doesn't happen to someone else." Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Will you sit with me? All of us? There are things I need to say." They gathered in the living room, all of them exhausted. The children had finally fallen asleep on the couch, curled against their grandmother. Richard began to speak, and for the first time he was completely honest. "I thought I was being smart," he said. "I thought I was protecting my children by gathering irrefutable evidence before making a move. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. I was afraid of losing custody, afraid of legal battles, afraid of looking foolish, and I let that fear matter more than stopping immediate harm." He looked at Sophia. "You asked me why I didn't intervene sooner. The honest answer is privilege. I could afford to wait because I wasn't the one suffering. My children were hurting, but I told myself it was temporary, that ending it the right way was more important than ending it immediately. And you were being destroyed, but I convinced myself that documenting it was more important than stopping it." I was wrong. Sophia didn't respond, just watched him with those steady, evaluating eyes. "I've been thinking about what Grace would say if she were here," Richard continued. "She would be ashamed of me, not just for what I let happen, but for how long I let it continue. She would tell me that having power means nothing if you don't use it to protect people who can't protect themselves. She would tell me that waiting for the perfect legal solution while people suffer is just another form of violence." Rose spoke up, her voice heavy with old pain. "My daughter loved you. She believed you were different from other men like you. Men with money and power who don't see people like us as fully human. She believed you understood what it meant to be married to a black woman, to raise black children in a world that would judge them for their skin color. Was she wrong? No, Richard said. She wasn't wrong. Or at least, she wasn't wrong about who I wanted to be. But grief and work and distance made me forget what mattered. I let my mother back into my life even though Grace had always been careful about boundaries with her. I got engaged to Vanessa because she seemed perfect on paper, and I didn't look deep enough to see who she really was. I failed everyone. The weight of his admission hung in the air. Sophia finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" "Vanessa goes to jail, maybe, though rich people rarely do. Eleanor pretends she was misguided but not malicious. You write some checks to ease your conscience, and I disappear back into my life. Except, I don't have a life anymore because Vanessa destroyed it. Is that how this ends?" "No," Richard said firmly. "That's not how this ends." The next morning, Marcus arrived with news. Vanessa had been formally charged with multiple counts of child abuse and 1 count of false accusation. The evidence was overwhelming. Her lawyer was already trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the district attorney was pushing for trial. Eleanor had retained her own lawyer and was trying to distance herself from Vanessa's actions, claiming she had been misled. "She's going to claim she's a victim too," Marcus explained. "Say that Vanessa manipulated her, that she didn't realize the extent of the abuse." "Will it work?" Richard asked. "Probably partially. She's unlikely to face criminal charges, but the video evidence of her racist comments and participation in isolating the children from their maternal family will be damaging in any civil case." Richard made a decision. "I want my mother prosecuted if possible. I want her held accountable, not protected because of her age or social standing." Marcus nodded. "I'll push for it. But Richard, you should know that pursuing this aggressively will have social consequences. Your mother has friends in high places. I don't care. My children deserve justice. Over the next week, more evidence emerged. Bradley, Vanessa's assistant, agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. He revealed that Vanessa had planned to institutionalize the children within 6 months, that she had been researching facilities that specialized in troubled children. He produced emails showing that she had contacted Richard's business partners to plant seeds of doubt about his mental stability, laying groundwork for a potential power of attorney claim. The depth of the conspiracy was staggering. Vanessa hadn't just been cruel. She had been systematic, calculating, working toward a long-term goal of removing the children from Richard's life and securing his fortune for herself. The private investigator Marcus had hired, a former FBI agent named Linda Chen, provided detailed reports of everything she had documented over 3 weeks. She had been posing as a contractor working on the estate's exterior, and her cameras had captured countless incidents of abuse and manipulation. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Vanessa's former college roommate came forward with information about previous incidents. Vanessa had been fired from a previous nanny position after complaints from the family, though they had kept it quiet to avoid a lawsuit. She had a pattern of targeting children of color specifically, of seeking out positions where she would have power over vulnerable kids. "She's a predator," Marcus said bluntly. She deliberately sought out wealthy widowers with young children, especially mixed-race children, because she knew they would be easier targets for her particular brand of abuse. The revelation made Richard sick. He had brought this person into his children's lives. He had been so blinded by surface appearances and social approval that he had handed his kids over to a monster. Meanwhile, Sophia's story was getting attention. A reporter had gotten wind of what happened and wanted to do a piece about domestic workers facing abuse and having no recourse. Sophia initially refused, not wanting attention. But Richard encouraged her. "Tell your story, not for me, but for every other person in your position who can't speak up. Make people understand what it's like to be trapped between survival and dignity." Sophia thought about it for several days. Then she agreed to the interview. The article came out in the New York Times a month later, and it was devastating. It detailed everything: Vanessa's abuse, Eleanor's complicity, Richard's privilege in being able to investigate rather than immediately intervene, and most of all, Sophia's impossible position. The article laid bare how domestic workers, especially women of color, were vulnerable to abuse because they had no legal protections, no power, and no recourse. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Other domestic workers came forward with their own stories. Advocacy groups called for new legislation. Several wealthy families in Greenwich were quietly investigated after former employees filed complaints. The story became a flashpoint in larger conversations about labor rights, race, and power. And through it all, Sophia became an unexpected voice for change. 6 months after that terrible night, Sophia sat in a lecture hall at the University of Connecticut, her nursing textbook open in front of her. She was back in school, fully funded through a scholarship that Richard had established in Grace's name. But he hadn't just written a check and walked away. He had done something much more significant. The Grace Mitchell Whitmore Foundation for Domestic Workers' Rights had been established with a $50 million endowment. Sophia was its executive director, working part-time while she completed her nursing degree. The foundation provided legal support for domestic workers facing abuse, funded emergency housing for those who needed to escape dangerous situations, and lobbied for legislation to protect household employees. Within 6 months, they had helped 83 workers leave abusive positions, secured legal victories in 12 cases, and were pushing for statewide legislation that would give domestic workers the same protections as other employees. Richard had insisted that Sophia run the foundation her way, with full autonomy. He sat on the board but had no executive power. He had also ensured that the board was majority people of color, most of whom had personal experience with domestic work. "I won't be the white savior of this story," he had told Sophia. "That's not what this is about. This is about giving power to people who've been denied it. I can provide resources, but the vision and direction have to come from the people who lived this experience." Sophia's grandmother now lived in a much better facility, with full-time care that the foundation paid for. Sophia visited 3 times a week, and her grandmother beamed with pride every time. "My baby is changing the world," she would say. Lily and Ethan were thriving. They spent weekends with Sophia sometimes, and she had become a permanent part of their lives, not as an employee but as family. Rose visited regularly, and Richard had worked hard to rebuild relationships with Grace's entire family, acknowledging how he had failed them in his grief. The children were in therapy, working through the trauma of what Vanessa had done, but they were healing. They wore their natural hair with pride now, and Richard had educated himself about caring for it properly. They talked about their mother often, celebrating her memory instead of hiding from it. Eleanor had been charged with conspiracy to commit child abuse and child endangerment. She took a plea deal that included probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. She lost her social standing, her friends, and her son's respect. Richard told her she could earn back a relationship with him and her grandchildren, but only through years of changed behavior and genuine accountability. She was trying, attending racism workshops and therapy, but the road was long. Vanessa went to trial. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was convicted on multiple counts. She received 8 years in prison and would be permanently barred from working with children. Her wealthy friends abandoned her immediately, and several of her former employers came forward with their own stories of her behavior. For Sophia, the biggest surprise wasn't the foundation or the scholarship or even the justice that had been served. It was what Richard had done the day after Vanessa was arrested. He had sat down with Sophia in his study and said, "I need to pay you back wages, with interest, for what Vanessa stole from you. I also need to compensate you for the emotional distress, the loss of reputation, and the abuse you suffered while in my employ. My lawyers have calculated an amount, but I want you to tell me if it's fair." He had handed her a check. She had stared at it, unable to process the number of zeros. She had started. "This is a fraction of what you deserve, but it's what we can justify legally and what I hope will give you real choices going forward. You shouldn't have to depend on anyone's charity, including mine. You should have enough to build the life you want." Sophia had looked at him for a long moment. "You know this doesn't fix everything, right? It doesn't undo what happened or erase how it felt." "I know, but it's a start. And Sophia, I need you to know something. When I offer you the director position at the foundation, I'm not asking you to be grateful. I'm asking you to take something you've earned through your courage and your voice. This isn't charity. This is you claiming space you deserve." Now, 6 months later, Sophia closed her textbook and checked her phone. She had a message from Richard asking if she could attend a board meeting next week. There was another message from a reporter wanting to interview her about the foundation's work. And there was a message from a domestic worker in Stamford who had seen the article and needed help escaping an abusive employer. Sophia replied to all 3, then gathered her books. She had a class in 20 minutes, and after that, she was meeting with a state legislator about the domestic workers' Bill of Rights they were proposing. Some nights, she still woke up from nightmares about that storage room, about Vanessa's cold eyes, about the feeling of being trapped and powerless. Therapy was helping, but trauma didn't disappear overnight. But she also woke up most mornings with purpose. She was using her experience to create change, to ensure that other women in her position would have options she didn't have, and that mattered. The following Saturday, Sophia attended Lily's 8th birthday party at Richard's new house, a smaller, warmer place that felt like a home instead of a museum. Lily had insisted Sophia be there, and when Sophia arrived, the little girl ran to her with a huge smile. "Sophia, look at my hair!" Lily's natural curls were styled in beautiful twists, adorned with colorful beads. Daddy and Grandma Rose did it together. They watched YouTube videos. Richard appeared, looking slightly harried but genuinely happy. "We watched many YouTube videos. So many. But we're learning." Rose laughed, holding Ethan's hand. The toddler had grown so much, his personality emerging bright and joyful. "You did good, Richard. Not perfect, but good. That's all I can ask for," Richard said. After the party, after the children were asleep, and the house was quiet, Sophia and Richard sat on the back porch. It had become something of a ritual, these occasional conversations where they checked in with each other. "How are you really doing?" Richard asked. "Honestly, some days are hard. I'm working through a lot in therapy. Trust issues, anger, grief for what was taken from me. But I'm building something good. The foundation helped another woman this week, got her out of a situation that could have turned violent. Every person we help feels like reclaiming something. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you regret any of it? If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you still take that job?" Sophia considered the question carefully. "That's complicated. I regret the abuse, the suffering, the loss, but I don't regret meeting those kids. I don't regret finding my voice and my purpose. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the foundation for the most important things we do. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I'm choosing what I do with having gone through it." Richard nodded. "Grace would have liked you. She would have been proud of what you're building. I wish I could have known her. From everything Rose tells me, she sounds like she was remarkable. She was. She taught me that love isn't enough if you don't back it up with action. That good intentions don't matter if you don't protect the people who are vulnerable. I failed those lessons for a while, but I'm trying to live them now." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sophia said, "You know what's strange? The first night I was here, when Vanessa made me sign that NDA and I felt so trapped, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything that mattered. But that moment, that terrible moment, was actually the beginning of finding out who I really was, finding out what I was capable of. I'm not grateful it happened, but I'm proud of who I became because of it." "You saved my children," Richard said quietly. "You saved them, and you saved yourself, and now you're saving others. That's not justice exactly, but it's something powerful." "It's not justice," Sophia agreed. "Justice would be a world where people like Vanessa don't get the power to hurt people like me in the first place. But it's accountability, it's change, it's refusing to be silent. And maybe that's how you build toward justice, one story at a time, one law at a time, one person finding their voice at a time." Later, as Sophia drove home in the reliable used car she had finally been able to afford, she thought about all the twists her life had taken. She thought about that scared woman in the storage room who had felt so powerless. She thought about the moment she decided to pick that lock and save Ethan, knowing it might destroy her. She thought about learning that the gardener was a billionaire and how betrayed she had felt. And she thought about where she was now, in school, running a foundation, using her voice to create change, healing slowly but surely from trauma. The story people wanted to tell about her was a simple one. Rich man saves poor woman, everyone lives happily ever after. But the real story was more complex and more powerful. It was about a woman who saved herself by refusing to be silent, who protected children at great cost to herself, who demanded accountability even from powerful people, and who transformed her pain into purpose. It was about how privilege works, how racism operates, how power protects itself, and how change happens when people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. It was about a black woman who survived and fought back and won, not because someone rescued her, but because she refused to let them break her. As she pulled into her parking spot at the decent apartment she could now afford, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Lily. "Sophia, thank you for being at my party. I love you. You saved us. Love, Lily." Sophia smiled, tears pricking her eyes. She had saved them. But more importantly, she had saved herself, and now she was helping save others. That was justice, imperfect and incomplete, but real. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly, but stayed silent because speaking up felt too risky? Have you ever been in a position where doing the right thing meant sacrificing everything you had? What would you have done in Sophia's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about power and justice and courage, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be in their own impossible situation and needs to know they're not alone. Together, we can amplify voices that are often silenced and create a world where people like Sophia don't have to choose between survival and dignity. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent when silence feels safest. May you find your courage when you need it most.